Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Tabitha Walton, and I'm a family consultant at the Caregiver Resource Center of Orange County. We're a nonprofit agency serving family caregivers through information and assistance, support groups, individual counseling, case management and care planning, respite assistance, and more. We host a live stream the last Monday of each month from 3 to 3:30 p.m. You've joined us this afternoon for What is Counseling? Today we have two licensed clinical social workers who will be answering our questions, Christina Ariano and Peter Wen. I'd like to give you each a chance to introduce yourselves before we jump in. Audience, please feel free to add comments or ask questions in the chat on whichever platform you've joined us from today. Christina, we'd love to hear from you first.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Christina Ariano, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a family consultant here at the Caregiver Resource Center. Thank you.
Welcome. And Peter.
Hi, thank you, Tabitha. Yes, so I'm Peter Nguyen. I am a licensed clinical social worker, also a family consultant, bilingual Vietnamese at the Caregiver Resource Center, Orange County.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for being here and for spending your time with us this afternoon. Let's go ahead and get into some of our questions regarding counseling. So, Peter, I'm going to start off with you. Why don't you tell us what is counseling?
That's a great question. And this question I can take, probably a whole hour to answer if we want to go at length. Or sometimes people even asking, what is therapy? Kind of in the same kind of language. So in my practice and my opinion is what is counseling is referred to the opportunity that a person invites themselves to get additional help relating to issues that involve, of course, our emotions, our psychology, our feelings, and sometimes that is beyond like a family member or even a close friend or best friend can help us to handle those complicated things. So then we invite ourselves, a person invite themselves to do therapy, to do counseling, to meet with um, a professional like us, to give them that space to talk about those issues in a deeper way. I'm not, going to give them advice, right? But I'm here to at least be the listener, be the person to give them the space and hopefully guiding them through the process of finding out what can they do to help themselves. Maybe they know, but maybe because in the trenches of problems, issue, then you can't see things anymore. It's all clouded. The tunnel vision now become tunnel. It's not even clear anymore. So I think my job is to help them see that and figuring out in their ways of seeing that light again, and s- and then find ways to help themselves. It just in a way, counseling is a way that people again invite themselves to have that chance to address problems, when it's too much for them to handle on their own.
Thank you so much for that. All right. And Christina, I'm going to go over to you. What does counseling typically look like?
Yeah, counseling typically involves a client, right? The person who is seeking counseling or therapy, meeting with their therapist, and usually these sessions are held weekly. Biweekly, they can, be in another frequency that's predetermined by the client and the therapist. Sessions are usually about an hour, and the treatment of counseling or the entirety of the counseling services really depend on the need for counseling, and the goals that are established by the client and the therapist. So usually that's what counseling typically looks like.
Great. Thank you. So, what I'm hearing from both of you is that it really reflects the needs of the person who is seeking counseling, but it provides a space for more than just casual advice. It's meeting with a professional to
Mhm.
process through what's going on in an individual's life. And Peter, are there different types of counseling?
I would say so. I mean, there are family counseling to address family issues. Obviously, marriage counseling. Most common would be individual counseling. A person seek that one-on-one support. Now we can go into the specific issue and those things. Like for our center, we of course focusing on caregiving issues. This is probably unique because it's hard to find a counselor, let's say a private therapist through insurance or just in the community that even say that they can have the skill or the experience to offer support relating to caregiving issues. But we can say that. We can say that. In fact, our clients that got referred for counseling in the agency, we 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 ask that they can only focusing on caregiving issues, and sometimes that's difficult because when we have people in our life, there's all kind of things can be blending. How do you distinguish that's caregiving and that's not, depression, or how is that marriage not involved, or family dynamics, those kind of things. But in answering that question, Tabitha, yes, in general, individual counseling, marriage, family counseling, and then specifically they can be caregiving issues, grief issues, the, or any issue that a person is looking for to get that help.
Hmm. Okay, thank you for that. And Christina, where does counseling normally take place?
So there are a few options. Typically, it's in an office setting, but I think with COVID and everybody kind of working virtually, a lot of counseling services were offered virtually at home, right? So through the comfort of your own home, through telehealth, or some counseling is even offered telephonically, depending on the client's access to technology, if the therapist is able to accommodate that. So it just really depends on the client's need and the therapist's capacity to accommodate. But yeah, there's a few options.
So it could potentially even happen over the phone.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. And Peter, what are some ways that if I needed to access a therapist, how would I get connected to a therapist?
That's a good question. I mean, like I mentioned earlier about, so a lot of medical insurance, they now offering that behavioral health services in the policy. So of course, the individual would look into the policy, and if that's a benefit, then they call the insurance. And if the excuse me, if the therapist or counselor is contracted with that or accepting that insurance, then the name can be provided. But like Christina shared, assuming if they want, in person, face to face, virtual, then they will either bring more. It can bring more names or narrow down the names, right? So let's say face to face in Irvine, then the insurance company will only give uh, therapists who may be within the certain radius miles of Irvine. If the person wants in virtual, then that just give more options. So that would be one way. And then sometime nowadays Google is perfect. You look for therapists in anything, and it will pop up those websites that post all the profiles of all the therapists that have their profile posted on those websites. For us, CRC is more internal referral. So the family consultant like myself, Christina, can say, "Oh, I have my client. I think we agree that they need help, needing more support from therapy." Then we do the internal referral. But in general, in the way to find counseling is I think typically is medical insurance and Google search, or sometime uh, just one-on-one referral. If if people know people, and then they can do that direct referral. But I think that's kind of rule to that.
Hmm.
Um, but if that's just like a family person, I don't think they have to bind by that rule of three, the conflict of interest rule. But let's say if I am the one that referring, I have to give at least three names for the purpose of not bias, and then give them that chance of choosing and not just following one direction.
Hmm. Great, thank you. And a question for both of you. If an individual does not have a traditional insurance, are there other ways that they can access therapy?
Yeah, I think one of the other common ways is typically certain like search engines that are specifically for therapists. So one of the most common ones being Psychology Today. And that one, you're able to, search and add specific filters that you are looking for in terms of a therapist. So location, whether they offer in person, virtual, the types of specialties that they might have, or what issues they might treat, and whether they take insurance. So there's also a filter on whether they're self pay or insurance. So those can be also helpful in helping you narrow down, by the preferences that someone might have.
Perfect. Thank you for that. All
Mhm.
right, Christina, another question for you.
Sure.
What does the first appointment of a counseling session typically look like?
Yeah, great question. The first appointment, there's a few things that are going on that typically will only happen in the first appointment, and usually it's the client completing required documents that are needed to move forward with counseling. So that can be forms on policies, uh, consent forms, other forms that might be necessary. Um, It then also involves a therapist gathering information. This might be historical information from the client. It might be information regarding, the current needs, why they're seeking therapy. It might also involve identifying the goals, like what does this person or the client want to get out of, therapy. And the first session is really a good place to ask, as a client, ask any of the questions that might be lingering, or anything that might be that one might need clarification on regarding counseling. It's a good time to ask about, any of the expectations for therapy, specific policies, related to counseling. So it's really a gathering of information during the first session, but it really sets the tone for the ongoing, sessions that you will have.
Perfect, thank you. And
Mhm.
that actually leads perfectly into my next question. Peter, is there anything that I should ask a therapist?
Um, that's a good question. I think like Christina currently touched based on a certain thing. Maybe what modality are you using perhaps to treat my problem? Um, and I think this is depending on the client. So sometimes it's that connection, and then that can bring up more kind of question that lead to because of that connection. Um, and this is where the therapist learn to identify how those questions can be used to be helpful or not helpful. Because as human beings, we call ourselves therapists, clients, but we're still human beings, and sometimes there are those connections. In fact, we recommend a lot of clients to not feeling discouraged when they look for a therapist because it's about finding that match, that connection. And until then they would feel like they don't get nowhere because of they don't feel that connection. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just a match, a fit thing, right? And sometimes it takes some work for some client to find that therapist that they feel like wow, it's connected, and they get
Mhm.
that help in the professional way. Of course, we all assume here, therapists hopefully do things within boundary, ethical stuff. But if that's all true and that connection is established, then that's golden. But question will be arise depending on those things. Sometimes there are nothing that people are asking because they don't feel that connection. They don't know well what am I supposed to ask? And if the therapist also look lost and don't know how to connect, then there you go. Then that's only maybe the only session that they're gonna have is that first session. and there won't be any second or third session.
So then, Peter, what would I do if I felt like there wasn't that good fit between my therapist and I? What steps should I take?
I think is now up to the therapist to be the facilitator, to allow, again, depending on what is a session, allow them to share, depending on how much the client can share, what they share. It's the therapist's job to facilitate, to continue to giving those, asking those questions that allow the client to continue sharing. And then you only kind of intervene, respond appropriately, and really be mindful. And I think I make the mistake a lot in the old days. Is that even now sometimes is sometimes eager to advise, and advice is probably the thing that we all learn that it won't help, it won't work. But sometimes just that eagerness, you want to say stuff so badly that then I just say things. Maybe that's just too early, and maybe it comes out as an advice form, then really in a way that frame it so that the client can think about it. The goal of therapy is not us telling them what to do, A, B, or C, or D. Is really they continue to figure out what would work best for them to deal with that problem, and then they may have to do certain tries, come back to us, check in, and then share. Okay, if that approach doesn't work, what can we do to deal with that problem? But this is something that I learned to be, as a therapist, more mindful of than, not talking too much, not sharing anything, not advising anything. It's about truly carefully listening, and I find that's an art. Really safe from a therapist, but when you truly listen, there's so much information that the person is given, done verbally. And then how do I use that to help them is up to me, and how my experience, my skill set, how do I do that? But they are giving so much info, it's unbelievable. But we have to listen and get all that.
So if you have a therapist who's competent, they should really be facilitating and building the connection with you as the client. Okay,
Correct.
great.
And I can
Thank
share
you.
more by remembering my days as an intern, and my field instructor. She's already a savvy, licensed social worker, and how she paralleled the supervision is so like a therapy. But I remember she didn't say much, but I learned a lot. She rarely say much, but I learned a lot. I'm thinking that's how I should kind of role model and follow.
Hmm, great, thank you. Okay, Christina, what type of things can I talk about in therapy?
Another great question, Tabitha. Really, you can talk about anything in therapy. I think, it's important to know that you don't only have to be experiencing, significant emotional or mental health challenges to, um, access therapy. I think, it's really important for you to identify a need that you have that therapy could address, and to feel comfortable enough to discuss what comes up in therapy. Goals that are identified for therapy, usually at the beginning of treatment, are what guide the sessions. So you really have freedom to discuss anything that you'd like. It typically will center around your current emotional challenges that you're experiencing. But again, there is, freedom and flexibility in bringing up what you'd like in your own counseling session.
Thank you. Okay.
Mhm.
And Peter, who do you think would benefit from therapy?
I think Christina already kind of prelude to that. Anybody is. I even know of colleagues that I don't think they have any problems, in my opinion, but they see therapists once a month. Sometimes it's just for that 1 hour of alone time with someone that you can trust, just to really just, I mean, in the language that, like, vomiting it out, let it out. That's how it is. The therapist doesn't have to say anything really, just being that trash can for 1 hour. and then take all that dump from the client. That can be feel healing. So literally anybody who feel ready, who feel that they can be vulnerable, then they can get that benefit from counseling. I think that there's a reason why now insurance all having that benefit for their clients, because we all understand we live in a nowadays of being more aware of mental health, from different age group, anybody, children, teenagers, adult, who doesn't matter, older adults, caregivers. It's about how are we aware of our well-being, and then how do we continue to promote, to continue fighting the issue of mental health, mental illness stigma that's been a thing for centuries, affecting all cultures, everybody. The moment someone share that they feel depressed, and we all like rolling our eyes and what's going on, we don't hug them, we like, okay. But then when we hear somebody say they have some sort of medical, which maybe a hug, maybe something supportive coming out of our mouth, but not depression, not anxiety, nothing like that. So we live in nowadays that we encouraging that. So literally anybody can benefit from therapy. Just have to be feeling that you are ready to be vulnerable, because you will be asked to be vulnerable. You're gonna cry, you're gonna feel emotion, you may be asked to think about things that way back. You don't have to, but depending on how the session is led, it can take you there. So it's just a willingness of being vulnerable and be okay with that. So because of that, I go back to the idea of you wanna find that connection with that therapist, because if that is not established, there cannot be vulnerability. We are afraid to be vulnerable, right?
Thank you. That sounds like both of you shared that anyone can benefit from therapy so long as you're ready, and a good therapist will be willing to work with you and meet you where you're at. And we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes here, but some of the two final questions for both of you. What do you, as a therapist, wish all clients knew about therapy?
I can go first. I think it's important to note that yes, therapy, is a very, I think, it can be daunting for many people. It's not something that can or is easily accessible at times. So there can be a lot of maybe stress or feelings of overwhelm associated with starting therapy. But I'd like, clients to know that it can be very beneficial to start therapy. It can bring so much support, additional emotional support. It can hold a safe space, for one to, talk about what they've been carrying, and to have obviously a professional who's listening and providing that guidance and support. Um, and so I think that they're, the benefits sometimes outweigh the risks in counseling. So it's important to just keep that in mind. That although it can be stressful, I think it's a very beneficial service.
I agree with Christina, and to add would be just feeling this is I'm going to use the client feedback, not even my own. Would be, after someone do it, therapy, counseling, then hope is a word. We they feel hopeful, they feel that there's directions. Hope is a key word, because I guess without that word we may not know what to do. Maybe just directionless, maybe just really clueless. But we have to have that sense of hope first, and who can instill that for each person. Sometime with maybe in the moment, family members, just social support are not the source that providing that hope feelings. Perhaps therapy is the place to start. Then once you have that, then all of a sudden, social family can you see it's different. People see it's different. I learned this from today from my own support group. I'm just led before this live stream. A client share. She was in denial, in deep depression, she called it. And then today, her language, just like a different person. She learned to reframe her own thoughts without even me have to do anything. see how to see the light, how to see the negative, but how do you reframe that? How do you manage? How do you cope with that? So in other words, she went through counseling. She went through things, and then this is the benefit. Hope. You see how you learn skills that you don't know before about managing emotion. It's easy to say, right? We can, oh yeah, people say regulate your emotion, manage well. It's easy said and done. Sometimes it needs you have to learn some skill to do so. And no better people to teach you than a therapist or counseling, like that you can have that. Now again, like I said, I'm repeating myself as a benefit in most insurance. Even medical offer that too as a free government insurance.
Thank you. And if I'm listening to this right now, but I'm still not sure about reaching out for support, do you have any advice or encouragement? And
Yeah,
that's a question for both of you. Yeah.
I'd
Go ahead,
I'd
Christina.
say reach out anyway. I think it's important to talk to a professional, and ask your questions. Clear up any doubts, or get the clarification you might need, um, to make an informed decision, right? Because I think information can only um, be more helpful in order for you to decide whether therapy is going to be the right thing to do in this moment. So that's what I would say, that if you're still having, um, you know you're wondering if you should, I recommend you do it and ask these questions, and be transparent with the person that you're speaking with on the phone, to kind of clear up any doubts or concerns you might have.
Yes, and again to add, it's okay to feel not ready a long time. But many people, in fact, there is no definite timeline that when you're ready. We just don't know. I think sometimes it's just life situation takes us to that readiness, quote unquote. And I think it's just feeling like if you listen to this, of course, it's like more like we're advising you now, right, or encouraging you to do counseling. But when you feel that you just at that place that okay, I think it feels something urging me to talk to somebody. I don't know, just to some human beings. And if that's the urge feelings, maybe that's the sign. But we there's no definite time frame of when we're ready or not ready. In fact, there are people start counseling and end counseling prematurely. Happen all the time. This is I'm just normalizing this whole process. Is like you try it doesn't work, you stop. That's okay. Take a break. There are people who in counseling for a long time. There are people only try a couple of sessions, they good, they're done. There are people try one time, they don't want to ever come back again. It's all good. But I think it's just that willingness to think about it. It would be my suggestion. Don't be afraid to even think about it. At least think about it and give yourself a chance. Like, okay, you know what is in my mind? Well, like Christina shared, maybe I can call some place to consult, see what they say. Maybe that's a good, maybe they recommend, maybe they don't. What does it matter? It's at least willing to think about it, willing to be accepting. And I think that would be at least like your own guidance of knowing, okay, I think I know where to go now. I know I have some direction of what to do if I have those urges feeling of telling me to call or talk to someone.
Well, Christina and Peter, thank you so much. That is our time for today, but I just appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience. And that was really helpful for me. And I hope it was helpful for our viewers today, too. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And I hope that this has helped anyone who is curious about counseling or who has hesitations or is looking to jump right in. We do offer individual counseling to family caregivers at the Caregiver Resource Center, Orange County. And for more information about this service, you can visit our website at caregiveroc.org, or you can contact our office Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m. And that number is 714 446 5030. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabitha.